our cash to about $772,000. If you go to other receivables, we're at $1.4 million. Last month we were at 2.6. So it shows that we had a decrease of about $1.2 million in other receivables. If you recall, back in last month, we had our auditors come in and they were talking about how we needed to do an audit adjustment for the meaningful use. And that was because it was related to, well, when we got the payment in October, we had posted that payment in October because we weren't sure when we were going to get that payment. But when the auditors came in, they, because the attestation was done in fiscal year 12, they had suggested that we make an adjustment entry to move that money back, or not money, but move that income back from fiscal year 13 back to 2012. So as a result of that audit adjustment, we had to make this month of September. So that kind of retroed back our receivables to January. So really, our January is up by 1.2 because of that audit adjustment. So really, there was very little impact on other receivables. But just wanted to kind of clarify that that's why you're seeing a $1.2 million decrease because of that adjustment.
I think we ought to stop there because it is $1 million, just to make sure the board understands what happened. We attested on September 19th. We didn't know if we qualified for the payment or not. It's $1 million incentive, $1.2 million incentive. So we called the auditors and said, hey, we don't know the number, the amount, or if we were accepted, we sent it in. They advised us that's fine, so we took it in fiscal 13. And so it came in October, so the $1 million was posted in October as income. We got the cash, it's in the bank. Then the audit happens and they said, well, no, actually, when you push the button on the 19th for testing, you should have made an entry in September's numbers to show that the $1 million was in September. If this had happened in June or July, it wouldn't have been a big deal because it's within the same fiscal year. It happened in September and October, so we're actually pulling $1 million back from 13 into 12. We got the money, it's just this year that it falls in. So it makes, we got to see the February financials, as you've seen in your packet, look horrible because we had to take $1 million adjustment. The auditor discussed it, but for $1 million adjustment, he didn't spend any time on it at the meeting last time. So that's what's happening. She's got some other things to show you what would have happened without that. Just want to make sure if there's any questions, because it's $1 million, just make sure everybody got that.
Okay, so our total assets ended up at $26,397,000. Compared to last year, we're at $24,285,000. So we're up from last year, and our total assets by $2.1 million. We go down to liabilities. There wasn't a whole lot of change there. We did reduce our accounts payable, and our deferred revenue did go down. Again, that was related to the tax revenue that we normally get. We set it up as a deferred revenue, and once we get it, we reduce that deferred revenue. Other current liabilities, that also decreased by $228,000. And again, that's related to the bond interest payment as well as the bond payment, which you'll see on long-term liabilities, decreased by $512,000. So that's really the big changes on the balance sheet. If y'all have any questions? Okay.
I'd just like to make a comment on two numbers. Over a 12-month period, assets are up $2 million and liabilities are down $1.2 million for a positive move, financial move of $3.3 million over a 12-month period. So those are the two numbers that really drive us. Okay. Thank you.
In your packet is also a I call it a normalizing schedule. What this is, and you'll see it says for information purposes. On your packet, you'll see under other revenue where that $1 million adjustment was made. What I did was in the first column is our actual activity for the month of February. The second column is the adjusting entries that was made. So if you look at other revenue, rather than having a $1 million loss, we're actually at $177,499 in other revenue. So if you take that adjustment down, if you go to the bottom line, net income, instead of it being $994,280 loss, we're actually at a positive net income of $269,575. Okay, so once we roll this forward to the income statement, if you turn it to the income statement. Here's that $1,086,086 we were talking about. If we were to adjust that, again, it would be $177,499. So instead of this $994,280 that's showing on your income statement, adjusting that $1 million out, it would be $269,575 on a budget of $250. So while it looks bad for the month, we're actually in a positive, in a favorable state as far as our net income goes. But let me start at the top here. Our gross revenue was $4.7 million on a budget of $5.7, so we're short about close to $1.1 million. Our deductions from revenue was 3.1 on a budget of 3.8, so we were favorable to budget by $756,000. So this $756,000 kind of offset this $1 million loss here. So the net revenue, the net revenue was 1.6 on a budget of 1.9. So our variance is really $300 and close to $17,000. Again, our other revenue, taking that into net, against net patient revenue, gives us total operating revenue of $518,000 on a budget of 1.9 and a loss of 1.4. Our total operating expense was 1.7 for the month on a budget of 1.8, so just slightly under $200,000. So our operating income was 1.2, and our budget was $55,000. So we had a difference of $1.2 million. And again, we have the adjusting entry, it would have come out to $65,000 right here. Our actual was $65,682, so we're favorable by about $13,000 there. Looking on it on the year-to-date. Year-to-date, we're at $24.8 on a budget of $27,664,000. So we're under budget by $2.8 million. Our deductions were 16.6 on a budget of 18.5. So we're favorable in our deductions by 1.8. So taking the difference between those two, we're off from our net patient revenue by $1 million. Our other revenue, now this right here is taken into consideration the $1 million adjustment that was made. So we have budgeted $610, so we're off $465,000. Coming down to total revenue, 8.3 on a budget of 9.8, so we're off 1.5. Total expenses year-to-date was 8.6 on a budget of 9.3, so we are favorable to budget by $681,000. So our income from, our loss actually from operations is $303,000 here on a budget of $481,000. So we're off from our budget by $784,000. Bottom line net income, taken into consideration property taxes, is $614,000 on a budget of 1.4, a difference of $840,000.
In our budget, we had $500,000 for the meaningful use money, the $1 million that moved. We conservatively budgeted $500,000. We believe that we will qualify in September of this year for the next payment, which is approximately $750,000. So it won't hit until September. It'll be the same type of thing. We will test in September, but we will take it on the income statement in September. So management is confident that we can make up the difference behind where we are in budget, in addition to some other things that the own team will work on. So we are behind budget. We acknowledge that. Part of that was the meaningful use issue, but we feel confident that halfway through the year now, our budget is still solid and we're meeting the numbers. I'd like to, one last thing, just showing, now that the audit is finalized, This is something I've shown to you guys before. If everybody's got one. If you look, this is the audited bottom line since 1996. The middle column, operating income, is the hospital bottom line, which we focus on. This is income prior to taxes. You can see for the past however many years that is, it's been in parentheses and in red ink. This past year, we had a $951,000 positive bottom line. If you include tax income, I've labeled it total income. Much better, $3.8 million for the year versus an average of about $400,000 prior to that. And then I also included the 2013 budget, which again we believe with confidence we'll be able to meet. And so both numbers continue to be black. We believe we'll exceed that. We'll see a continued positive trend of having the hospital pay for itself. That's been our goal, and we've achieved that goal. And continue to strive that we're not relying on the tax money that we put in the bank for and use for other things, equipment purchases and those kind of things to move the organization forward.
Okay. All right, Mr. Keith Johansson is chairman of the Finance Committee. What is your recommendation?
We move approval and so make that motion.
It is a recommendation and a motion from the chairman of the Finance Committee to approve the monthly and year-to-date February financial and statistical report. And a second by Tommy Sorrell. Discussion. If not, all those in favor raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.